Oi, sorry if I scared you. I scared some people in the chats. We're gonna start in a few minutes. We'll let some people come in. Thanks for joining. It's your boy, Green. We're out here. I wanted to start the stream with some Riddim, because what is it? Shout out everyone in the chats right now. Hello, it is your boy. I already said that, yeah. It's good to be back. We are doing something a little different today, having a little conversation with one of my homies that I met back in 2017. a conversation that I feel like I've been trying to have for a very long time, talking about Riddim, the genre as a whole, focusing more on the culture and the scene at large, rather than discussing too much about what it is exactly when it comes to the musical portion of it. I've been having this conversation with people around the world for a very long time. Probably in the last 3 years, hundreds of people. I've asked questions. I wanted their insight and their perspective on the whole situation. And what I've learned not only from this, but studying other genres of music, everything is very subjective. And although what I may find to be rhythm, someone else may not. So, besides all that, I think everyone here in the chats can probably agree that this past year, especially, Riddim has made it to a new limelight where it can be considered popular. Some people can even call it mainstream. So, with that being said, I would like to kind of just talk about what's happening. I'm not here to say this is right or this is wrong. I'm trying to provide all perspectives of, this whole spectrum of the music. So, without further ado, we're going to get started. This is Grandma Thought. So, this is going to be the podcast. And kind of like we're doing a little soft testing on it. And this is a subject that I'll be talking more about in the future for sure. So, we're going to bring in my boy Nick. Before I bring him in, he is someone that I met out in Illinois. I believe it was Elgin at this venue called Candela, and it was July 28th of 2017. It was a massive lineup, and we had Shivers, Back to Back Obey. It was the day after my birthday, and I was able to play that night, which was an historic moment. And I met Nick that moment. It was really cool. So we're gonna bring him in. Hello, Nick.
Howdy, hey everybody. Thank you so much for having me. And I would say you did more than just met me that night. You gave me my start. I mean, you allowed me to, you're like, yeah, you want to come up on stage? Let's go. And that started a whole, you know, just next generation.
Yeah. Well, I remember that moment very vividly. I was sweating like no other. I had my hair up in a bun, and I think it was towards the end of the set, and I saw you there, and you're like, "Hey, like, could I get up there? Let's rock on!" And yeah, so Nick was someone who this past year helped me out a lot and helped me travel from Madison, Wisconsin, all the way to go to Minneapolis, right? Yeah, that was
Yeah, good trip.
it was a good trip. But it was a 6 hour trip, and that was for Shivers Back to Back Infect, which was a beautiful time. So without him, we wouldn't have that footage. Shivers, there you go. That was it. Shivers and Infect being some of the first people to get me into the music itself. They finally got it back to back out in Minneapolis. So it was important for me to be there because I've just liked to be at these moments. So I could tell the story to everyone and add it into this whole thing that we call Riddim. So anyways, before we get started, Nick, why don't you tell people a little bit about what you do, what you've been doing, and what you got planned?
I actually do very little because I have one of the worst upload schedules on earth.
Right next to me,
But
probably.
I record anything and everything. My friends will all, echo that sentiment, and whether or not that gets uploaded. I'm sitting on about 4 or 5 terabytes
Ooh,
of
another another
of
collector. There you go.
some of the best and worst content in the EDM scene. I'm kind of cranking out all of the old stuff right now. I'm at EDC 2018, so at some point we will make it back to the good stuff.
So
But
did you start in 2017?
yeah, literally that show that you brought me to was one of the first shows I ever recorded.
Okay, I love that.
I had done a couple in 2016, but it was mainly for the purpose of I went to a show and then I just wouldn't remember it. And I wanted to save some of those iconic memories, and
Yeah.
it turned into all this.
Yeah, I could relate there. What do you got planned in the future?
Well, coming up at this Lost Lens, hopefully each and every one of you can be there. Started off as a joke, but quickly became a terrifying reality. We're doing a presentation at the Discovery Center of Lost Lands, the epicenter of what you could say is the problem of the underground becoming mainstream,
Mm.
called Is It Dubstep or Riddim? And it's kind of a deep dive into the music that we hold so dear. Uh, and, really talking about our opinions, our experiences, and, Mr. Gramith Greenwood himself will be a keynote speaker along with Tariq Hamro. Very excited. We're going to start off doing games, random stuff, not 100% planned out yet. I would like to hear your suggestions. Please, hit me up on IG. Say, hey, I think this would be a cool thing to do. I think this would be a cool thing to do. I would love to hear all of that. No wrong answers.
There we go. Yeah. Should be happening on Sunday, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Sunday noon.
Noon, yes, at the Discovery Center. So, um, yeah, right. A couple hours before that, it's gonna be Bomber, right, and then it's gonna be Chibs right afterwards. Uh, and then we'll continue on. Nick hit me up randomly about this, and he's like, "Hey, this and that," and this being a conversation that I've been having with many people for a very long time. I've been training. That's kind of like what I've been doing because I've needed to have this conversation many times to kind of see what the different aspects of people's perspectives are. And yeah, I'm here or we're here to kind of like have a conversation about it. And at Lost Lands, I feel like it would be a nice place to kind of have that convo because there is a lot of pros and cons when it comes to these big mainstream festivals. Without a doubt, if Lost Lands didn't exist, I'm not sure I would be where I am right now. Lost Lands, year and year again, has changed my career. But at the same time, with that, I also see changes in the underground where I am found. If it's underground, that's where I'm found. It's a new saying. I thought of it today. But I just enjoy kind of how the underground, there's a different sense of community. There's people who are interested in something that the large majority of others aren't. And I've always been kind of like on top of that, whether it's in music or movies, TV shows, etc. But I think Riddim is the one thing that I'm the most involved with, for sure. And so, yeah, thanks, Nick, for giving me the opportunity. We're going to talk about all the things, but this is kind of a little test run or, training for us to kind of have this conversation for those who can't make it to Lost Lands and just gives this a platform so people can hear it. So
I was actually thinking about that, and I was hoping there was a chance we could stream it if we were able to get production Wi-Fi.
Oh, you need like satellite Wi-Fi for that or something, because even the Wi-Fi there is gonna suck. Maybe
That's true.
If we have like an Ethernet cord, like just get the longest one, like a Cat 7. I think that'll help out a lot.
Yeah, run it from the gas station.
Oh man, but yeah, so that would be cool. That's something in the future we could probably like. This was very like we started planning this last Saturday. And so yeah, so we've been having the chat and here we are now. So I guess we can just start off. And I guess where I wanted to start off was where that mix that we were listening to at the beginning.
Who's Mans? Because that was...
Mans likes blocks. Okay, I think if SoundCloud is correct, this was uploaded 8 years ago. Yeah. Okay, so the reason I brought that mix up because this is one of my favorite mixes of all time, and even today in 2023, if you were just to show that mix to someone right now, like I just showed you guys, it just sounds like it came from a present moment, but no, it comes back from back in the day.
It
8
was
years.
hype in the chat.
Yeah. So, Blocks, I've known of him for years. Back when there was a group called the Akatsuki. Crews back in the day were very popular. Yeah, it's a collective of people, and they still are today. But back then, they had more of a prominence because I think it was easier for people to find a group of people and go through their music than it was individually. But yeah, this one was just straight heat all the time, and it was kind of what I trained on in essence. This was my study material, so I would listen to it time and time again. This style of mixing is what I try to emulate with my sets nowadays. Really, I think every year as I've progressed as an artist, a DJ, I try to dig deeper into the underground because whenever I get to play a show, like let's say like Space Yacht, that would have like 1,200 people at like 10 p.m. Huge turnout. So in my eyes, I'm just like, when else are this many people gonna listen to the most underground stuff?
Yeah, and I mean, it's funny you say that because it seems like nowadays brews will kind of pop up and then just immediately disappear, and it's kind of a bummer to see. I know in Chicago, the Gator Gang is getting like a big, they're all kind of going at it. But yeah, nowadays you really don't see it anymore. Akatsuki and I mean even Sinister Six
Mm.
folded, and I'm just trying to think of. I
Oh,
mean now like Kaizoku is still doing okay.
oh, they're one of my favorite crews that exists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is important, like, being able to find that one artist and being like, oh, okay, they have these friends, they love each other's stuff. Probably gonna get in that as well.
I think
But it kind of monopolized. I mean, there's Monsters, Never Say Die folded,
mm,
Savage Society. Um,
very few crews remain from the beginning, and I remember back in the day they had like the Wizards, the Blazers, Cookers, the Akatsuki, then obviously the Monsters, Savages, because I remember the first introduction to Riddim ever, but like it all starts with dubstep. And that's one thing that to get across is just like what I see or what I've observed at least is dubstep is this genre of music, right? Started off back in like the early 2000s and has evolved throughout then. Over the years, as a genre grows, there's different sects of style that kind of come out of it. And that's just a common trend when it comes to the evolution of a genre. No matter what genre you're in, it'll always happen where the sound will change. There's no stopping that. But there'll always be those people who stick to the roots of how it's, was constructed early on. And, the early days of like Scream, Banga, Koki, Mala, all these people who kind of originated the sound. A lot of them still do it today, right? But obviously, that style of dubstep is only popular in certain regions of the world, right? Europe being the main one, some parts of America. Uh, but when dubstep kind of changed and evolved in like 2012 with like Skrillex and all these other bro steppy, as they call it, right? Bro step. Sound came to be and that became more popular. That sound is very palatable for many people, like a large majority of the crowd. That's why I feel like it's very popular and it's gained a lot of traction over the years. Um, but I
well, I
did,
mean, it's funny.
yeah,
Sorry.
go
It's
ahead.
funny you say Scream because, Scream has been a bucket list artist for me for a long time. I mean, I remember as embarrassing as it is, I was on the train in seventh grade and I had found some sort of EDM or something or some sort of dubstep and I Googled like best dubstep songs, whatever. And Midnight Request Line by Scream came up and I just loved that track. Everything about it. Midnight Request Line is still to this day one of my all-time favorite tunes. And I've been trying to see a Scream dub set my entire life. And kind of going back to the core point of this is, the mainstream evolution of everything. one of the only dubsets he's played in recent years was at Coachella.
Mm.
Coachella. Like, I don't want to go there. You couldn't pay me enough to go there. It just,
It's
oh,
yeah. It's I don't think I've ever seen a dubstep scream set. I think I've definitely seen a house set,
yeah,
but the dubstep no. And Scream was like the first one for me in like 2008 when I found out about dubstep. But once the music started changing, I used to listen to Excision back in like 2008, 2009. The sound was so different. It was grittier. It was more kind of like alien, robotic, very like just scary sounds. And it was cool.
yeah.
I like the scary shit. I was into metal, deathcore, metalcore, all this stuff. Any kind of music that really gets you hyped or go crazy. That was me. So, but then music started changing, and I remember chilling with my homie Nandis forever ago. It was 2012, probably like 20. And then he was like, "Yo, we found this. Like, I think you'll like it." I'm like, "Okay." And I showed Nandis dubstep before that, so we would always go to shows together. But yeah, this time he showed me something, and it was a song called "Devil Music" by Blood Thinners, and that was it. I was like,
Yeah.
"That's it."
I remember that tune.
Yeah. So, and that kind of started the journey. But in 2012, there wasn't really much of a name for the music. It was kind of like underground dubstep. Some people would call it wonk. It was never really like, it was mostly on the forums where it existed, where people were trying to like give this genre a title. Um, and it's very interesting how that happens.
Yeah.
Like what constitutes, that name, or how does it become, palatable for everyone? And that's kind of
Well,
like what I've always been doing the research on, trying to figure that out. But
I feel like kind of we were talking about that earlier. When it comes to the actual music itself, there's so much room for interpretation. Everyone can call it a million different things, but one of the important things to focus on is the scenes themselves because it's just a lot easier to define that. The people that we have in the chat right now, people who are fans of that underground stuff. I mean, even everyone in the chat saying, "Who is this mix? What is this? This is gross." Like immediately you're entranced by that sound where it is quality. It is kind of just, whoa, I have not heard this. Like,
yeah, yeah, that's where, I guess that's why I love the music so much, and I still do. But back then it was so new, and I feel like me, Nandis, and maybe like one or two of other of my buddies who listened to it, we were probably like the first couple people in our northeast area who knew about the music, and that was just a really cool feeling. So just kept going, but eventually Riddim became a term for the music, and that was 2014. I would want to say when I actually like remember maybe the end of 2013, and yeah, after that things started popping off, and I I chase kind of like this feeling that I think a lot of people can relate to, where it's you enter a venue, you're excited to see an artist, you've been listening to their songs, their mixes for a long time, and this is like early days. You don't have videos online. The only ones are like kind of like live streams. You have a couple shows here and there, but there wasn't any consistent content for that music, which bothered me a lot. Oh, because I was always hunting on Facebook or YouTube, wherever. But that's where I guess I saw that there was an importance in documenting the music, because there would be a point in time where a lot of people are going to be listening to it, and they're going to be wondering, what is this music? Like, how did Riddim become a thing? Like, why is it a thing? So I guess I just was proactive and came up with the GramCam, and now we're here. So it's without making that decision, I don't think I ever would have met Nick or a lot of the people in the chats. It's crazy, kind of.
yeah,
Yeah, I
that's
don't,
true.
so I am very grateful for following through with that crazy idea back then. Nowadays, the importance of videos in the rhythm scene is so like vital for a brand that if you don't have that, it's hard to grow.
Well, and just the social media aspect of it. Like it's what are the two Instagram accounts? Ripped Plates and Cry Some More. I
Oh,
get sent the
I love
same
Cry Some More.
video by 20 different people because they're admittedly hilarious,
I
but
love
it
it.
becomes almost irritating because I'm the Riddim guy and everyone's like, "Oh, I gotta send this meme to Nick." It's like, yeah, I fucking saw it. Thank you.
Well,
Uh,
social media has become such a important aspect to it. I
hmm,
remember,
give me like 1 sec. I'm gonna grab a water real quick.
yeah, I remember 2017, probably like end of 2016. I had this idea where like I would just make memes and put songs over it. Eventually, like put doubles from one of my mixes, and those memes did really well. And and it's crazy how to this day, if you have a social media page and you focus on memes, there's a good chance people. I absolutely love them. I think they're genius. I'm also a meme lord, so that also adds to it. But I also think like with my brand in itself, uh, I've always loved to use memes, just because they're funny and people can relate to them, and it it's what the algorithm likes. So, but yeah, social media in early days, it was non-existent in the sense of videos, or Facebook was so archaic back then. But then Instagram started allowing people to upload videos like 2015, 2016, probably earlier than that, but that's when I found out about it. And that's when everything kind of changed. And Instagram kind of started becoming the main source for finding the music and all that stuff once Facebook died. But it's crazy. Back in the day, I feel like I'm an old scholar. Back in the day of the early days of Riddim, uh, it was word of mouth for the most part, where you would need to be good at what you do, whatever it is, and people found out about you. It's kind of like how it worked. Now, you could just really excel at social media, and then you'll be good, right? So,
Yeah. Oh, 100%. If you're able to get a decent like marketing program together, one of my friends from Indianapolis, Nick, has grown two separate projects without any assistance from like the prior one. He grew a Arc and Rust YouTube channel to like 800K with just good market manipulation, and then started a new like crypto AI informational Instagram. Like the guy who like they post those shorts and stuff that just blow up,
mm-hmm.
and without any help from the first you know project, grew that one to I think 200,000 followers. And it's like, Jesus. I
Yeah,
mean, it's just so instant for some people.
you cracked the code, and I think the importance of social media when it comes to Riddim, it's a big thing. I remember, I was consistently uploading videos in like 2015, 2016, 2017, like for years. I was nonstop. And 2016 came along. I was doing it for a little bit. People were seeing some of my videos. It was like, okay, cool, cool. And then bigger artists started incorporating not only paying for ads, but also using videos on Facebook and like combining the two. That is where everything kind of just the whole playing field went into a different level. And for me, that was kind of like the gold rush of Riddim, where it was DIY.
Hmm.
Literally, like if you wanted to do it, find a venue, get it cracking. The ideas of agents and managers was very few and far between in the underground. Barely
Yeah, there
existed.
wasn't enough money to bring in extra people, let alone yourself. I mean,
Yeah.
it was always a side project for so many, and
Yes,
seeing
and
all these people.
mm-hmm.
I mean, even at Lollapalooza, Shaq did a set, and the Chicago Bulls mascot Benny the Bull was up on stage
Benny,
with Shaquille O'Neal
let's
as he
go.
played Infect, Samplifiers, Space
Let's
Laces,
go.
and it's just the fact that that's even happening is really strange to think about. I even saw somebody in the chat mention it, considering that we were in middle school, high school, maybe even college for some, getting made fun of for listening to this music.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you like that Transformers, blah blah blah, and now people are hitting me up like, hey, can you get me tickets to this? Like, I'm unable to.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that was I think in high school when I was listening to dubstep, and then eventually in college when I was listening to Riddim, I was very selective of who I would show my music to, just because it was so new. And once I started finding the people that actually fucked with it, that's when you're like, oh, this is something cool, you know. And social media, like just to turn back to that tangent real quick, uh, in many aspects, I feel like has helped the scene out in tremendous ways, without a doubt. But at the same time, has taken away from a lot of it as well. And I
Which
am
aspects did you say?
um so I've been observing a lot of shows for many years, and I go to a lot of techno shows on the weekends out here. Basement is called the venue. It's in Brooklyn. It's beautiful, best place on earth. And what I enjoy about going there is that they put stickers on your phone, the front one and the back one, and the rules clearly state no taking pictures or videos of anything throughout the night. Really cool idea. Something that I didn't really experience until like the summer of 2022 when I started going to these shows. And I obviously would comply, like no problem. I wouldn't do that. I would do that. It's fine. I
Yeah,
wouldn't.
respect the
Yeah,
organizer.
you're providing great music and a great ambiance. Of course, I'll just stay away from my phone. Which, for me, right, as Graham Greene, going to shows, recording every single moment, always having my phone, always being on my phone. At first, it was a jarring kind of thing. I'm like, I wanted to check my phone, but I'm like, oh wait, no, like I'm not gonna check it because I'm not supposed to, because I'm supposed to be here in the moment instead of like checking my phone or trying to take a video. So over time, it started becoming like these 6 hours that I would be at the show, or 7 hours, was like a time to just be present in the moment. And I don't touch my phone for the most part, and I'm just there vibing to the music, and I'm in the moment. I'm not distracted by anything, and the music is really like orchestrating the night, in the sense where
Sure.
like the DJ is like the conductor, and the decks are the instruments. This is a crazy thing, but I resonate with that so much because in the early days when I was starting off in 2015, I would go to Montreal a lot. If anyone's from Montreal out here, Tabarnak. Yes, that was my home. That's where
That better not.
that was where I kind of like grew up as Graham Greene. The Canadians, the Quebecois out there, they understood what I was doing and supported it. So that's where I would always go to these shows. And 2015, social media wasn't really that big. People still, wouldn't always be on their phones. People still had Blackberries back then. I think I still had like some really archaic phone. It was a different world. And when you would be at the show, most people are just vibing. No one's on their phone. Like you don't even realize it because that was just the norm back then.
Yeah,
But as
there was so
time,
much less purpose.
yeah. But now as time progressed, you go to a show and then everyone is on their phone, right? Everyone's recording, everyone's like doing their thing, which, I'm one of those people. I was there doing that. But over time, attending these techno shows and going out to Europe and going to shows out there, I realized that there's a lot of distractions that happen in shows nowadays. And, the phone is one of them. I think another one is there's too much of a heavy emphasis on visuals when it comes to the underground, at least. Where, for me, in my opinion, I think what works best is just one singular light, and just vibes, good sound system, and go off. That's pretty much it. And there's a lot of attention that's being spent on things that really like are moving us away from the music.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, and one thing that I'm for anyone in the chat who hasn't seen it, I'm gonna pop a link in chat to a fantastic video that if you haven't watched, you should definitely go watch, called All My Homies Hate Skrillex. And
Oh yeah, that one.
one of the points that they bring up was back in 2008, 2009, whenever it was in the UK, when the scene was still kind of developing and finding its rhythm, there was a smoking ban indoors. So all of these clubs where people would be, like you said, locked in, no phones, no worries, no troubles, able to smoke, able to find their spot and lock in all night, you were no longer able to do that. And so people are coming out, going in, leaving, kind of all over the place. And that can be one of the most irritating things at shows. I know personally that will drive me up a wall if I'm just trying to, I've got my spot, I'm hanging out, I'm getting into it, I'm having a good time, and there's 19,000 people pushing their way past me because the view from here to right there is vastly different. I gotta get up there. It's like, and you don't get that at smaller shows with a more peer crowd. People are, if anything, run to the bar, grab a drink, but
Yeah,
very, very different crowd.
I think someone mentioned in the chats about the Ring of Death. There was a show that I played with some of my boys, like Rain Pyro, Hamro, myself, and really good time. We had also Brute, Zin, and some other people, Gaps.
The Immortals.
Yeah, beautiful time. But I specifically wanted the smaller room because there was a bigger room that they had a week prior to that where Shivers played. Crazy, like Jumbotron in the middle, in the center of everything is a 360. It was really cool. Don't get me wrong, but where the music thrives, in my opinion, is the smaller, intimate, minimal visuals, emphasis on sound, and emphasis on vibes. That's kind of it.
And I think that I would argue this, and I'm sure a lot of people would too. Your show was better. Like the vibes were immaculate. Everyone in there was having a blast. Everything that just looking around, it was a madhouse, and everyone had a blast at Base Station that night. And I had actually asked you earlier on, or no, I think you had just mentioned. I think I heard you talking like, "Oh no, I don't want the big room. I want to stay in the side room." At the time, I didn't understand it, but listening to Graham talk more about it and kind of looking at it from a different perspective, it makes a lot of sense because we just a week earlier had probably the same exact people in a different room listening to somewhat similar music. Shivers is very different vibe, but it felt completely different. The crowd response was completely different, and I had a very different time that night. Like, I was having a blast. I mean, and it was really funny because early on I was trying to sell. We had some set time mix up, and I was going around trying to work it out. And I asked Hamro if he wanted to do a back to back with Graham Green rather than 2 45-minute sets. I'm like, let's have a Ham Green hour and a half. And Graham had his reasons. Then he was like, I don't know. I think we'll just do it. I don't think the people want it, which I love that answer because at the end of the day, he's doing what you guys want, and he's listening to what he's not doing it for him. He's doing it for you. And then as soon as Hamro finished his set and Graham came out, the entire crowd. Ham Green, Ham Green, Ham Green.
Oh man!
And he did it. He wasn't like, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. No, he did it. The people wanted it, and he did it, and we love that. Yeah. Insane energy that night.
And that's
also,
yeah.
Never mind. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, Ham Green. That like you said, I'm a man of the people. I didn't even say a singular word. I think I was gonna say something on the mic, and then the chant started. So I was like, okay, and that's where, I missed that moment, and I miss those moments that I'm able to replicate, or at least try to do over in a sense, because you can't ever replicate a memory or a moment, but you can get close, right? And I'm very good at getting close. So I
can replicate the feeling.
Yeah. So I like that, and the main thing is showing other people what the music is possible of, what the potential is, where you go, and I think that's where where I'm playing shows or I'm curating an event it's also like curating a vibe. And I think that's a big part of what Riddim is. It's the energy of people coming together and, you know, spending that moment of time going crazy for music that either, you know, some of their favorite tunes are played out or music that they've never heard before. And kind of sharing that moment. That's where Bass Station, we love Bass Station a lot. Yeah. And I think someone mentioned Basement Saturdays. Yes. Just real quick, because I think in the timeline of Riddim, I think Basement Saturdays at Webster Hall, New York City, was an very important part of it all. New York used to be the hub. Everyone wanted to play Webster Hall, especially this basement. Place would get rowdy. And I started going there in 2012 when they first started up. And I just kept going until 2017, where they closed it down and then rebranded, sold off to like Live Nation, and kind of became the same venue, but just more organized. Got rid of the basement, but that's where we had
better.
Yeah, better. So we had Shivers Back to Back Obey for like 3 hours. They had to kick us out of the venue. They were like, they turned the lights on, but they were still playing. It was ridiculous. And, you know, we also
I seem to recall you doing that a couple times at Bass Station.
Oh, yeah. They always turn the lights on me. But yeah, Basement Saturdays was a very important kind of venue for the underground. I mean, a lot of artists got their start there playing shows. And to see that it's not there anymore is sad. But, you know, I have always made it a mission since it closed to kind of do some work to bring it back. And we're slowly getting there. On Friday, a little promo here. If you're in New York City, in Brooklyn specifically, there's a Riddim bus that I'll be playing with a lot of homies. And it's a bus. It's literally a bus with subs, the sound system. We just pick an area and we skank out until the cops tell us to move. And we'll move somewhere else. And then we'll do it again. We keep doing it until the early morning. Because there's a lot of areas out in Brooklyn that have no sound ordinance, right? So you can just go crazy. Yeah. So we're going to do that on Friday. Information is on my Instagram. But anyways.
We really got to get you out in Chicago because you do some of the most just ingenious shows that it hurts my heart that I'm not able to just fly out there on a whim. Like, I want to go see the Riddim bus.
Yeah, it's that's one thing I wanted to kind of touch on with Riddim as well. Like, you know, you could have a crazy time with the music and have it in different kind of locations. I've played on a boat, like High Caliber, which is like the thumbnail for the stream right now. That was on a battleship that was in war at one point. And they just made it into like a mini festival. And I was lucky enough to play where the cannons are. That was fucking amazing. It was sick
that
time.
Picture is so unbelievably hard.
I just love it so much. Yeah.
But yeah, like you were talking about Basement. It is funny how one person, one organization, one web venue can do so much for a scene. Like, full props to Zach and Marco, Bass Station, Dub Hub, for really turning Chicago into an epicenter. We have an unbelievable Riddim scene.
Yes.
Because of that, not many other people are doing it, especially since COVID. They really are the only ones truly propping up the underground, and we'd love to see that.
Yeah. Yeah, I love Illinois. Has always shown me love. Since the first time I was there, like 2017. Chode Gang. Yeah, Chode Gang was playing. Remember that show? Yeah.
At the theater, that's right. Yeah. That was like a North Coast after party, I think.
Yes, that was, you know, if people don't know what Chode Gang is, it was a group early in 2017, end of 2016. It was more so a meme where 3 artists came together, had like these emoji masks on, and pretty much just did their thing. And it blew up. It went viral. People went crazy for it. And then they started playing shows. The first one they had was in Webster Hall, so I was there for that one. And then they had another one in June out in Chicago, so I went out for that one too. Met a lot of homies out there. There's people that I still talk to today. And I that moment, just seeing where the scene was, and Chode Gang was super mainstream. You know, they would play some, underground stuff, but it wasn't like too crazy. But I saw that there was a lot of potential for the underground in Illinois. And then once Bay Station started throwing shows. Before it was Lakehurst events, and they would have like quinceañeras there. That was a trip. When I started going there in like 2018 when they started having shows there, and you would go to the bathroom and it would be like a bunch of a Mexican family celebrating the quinceañera, like right there, and then you got people who are just like cooked out of their minds. They're just like going to the. I'm just like, I wonder what these people are thinking.
They've done a lot better job of separating it
Yeah.
nowadays. But yeah, back in the day, it was so funny. You'd walk through the parking lot and there'd be families with sombreros on, and you would hear their music, and then just right there, like
Yeah, it
cooked
was,
beyond belief.
and that's kind of where a lot of the early shows had to happen. I've been to a lot of like strip clubs. I've been to a lot of warehouses, a lot of just people's houses. The music was anywhere where people were willing to make it happen. That's where they'll do it, because there was so little attention to the show. Not many would do well, so a lot of it was more or less a passion project for these promoters to kind of like throw these shows. And it's crazy to think, but like a lot of the time with the little production value that they had, because they didn't have the money to really invest into it, they made up for it with the vibes. And
Right.
I think that's one thing that I chase after, is kind of like the vibe of the night and how people are receptive to the music, and also what the sense of community is, how much people support it and try to put it on. That's why Illinois, Chicago, Waukegan area, beautiful place. Another place, Denver, Colorado. Yes. I was just there for base ops a couple of weeks ago. That was another crazy time. I was able to really dig deep into the archives, because I know Denver holds it down every time, and they want to hear the deepest and darkest of underground music. So I love Denver with all my heart. It's a great place. And
I
yeah.
I do hate the some of the crowds, like at any medium to large show. Like it goes from incredible to just, you know, fucking Kappa Beta Psi so fast.
Mm.
And it's just, yeah,
I see. I
that's the
guess
one.
for me, it's hard for me to gauge those things, right? Because whenever I do go out for shows, it's sometimes I don't get to experience too many of them, because I'm only there for a limited amount of time. So I guess with the bigger shows, right, these promoters have more money to promote, right? And also it's kind of like a staple in the community, where people are like, oh yeah, cool show, like all this stuff. And that also, brings a crowd of people that could be rude, also like unappreciative of what's going down with the music. And I think that's an inevitable kind of factor in the music
Right.
scene in general.
Oh,
And
yeah.
but that's where you could be. Well, for me, I'm selective in the sense of where I'll travel the world for these shows. I've done it, and I will continue to do it. It's all about like chasing that vibe that resonates the loudest with the music, and that's where small venues, minimal lights, great sound, that makes Riddim what it is, and because that's how it started. And feel like I'm an activist for the underground, in the sense where we create what ends up becoming popular, like our underground world. We put in the effort to get this heard, and now, like you were saying before, Shaq's playing a lot of the homies' tunes.
not only playing Boundless, but playing the Samplifier edit of Boundless is wild to me. But like to what you were saying is, seeing it from different perspectives. I was out there in April for Sudden Death's Valley of Darkness,
Mm.
and the night before was the Infect show at RealWorks, and I was in there with Squishy and Hamro and the whole gang, and that crowd. Like I got an instant juxtaposition. They dropped, I don't know who it was, but somebody dropped Menticide,
Mm.
the Yak Samplifier collab, and people went just dog wild. It was a madhouse, and I was looking around like, oh my god! And then literally the next day, full crowd too at Red Rocks, but different crowd. But there was a lot of people there during Yak's and Prosecute's set, and just no reaction. Great tune, no reaction. Everyone's just standing there while the group that I'm with is. And I was just kind of looking around. I even I was taking a Snapchat video during that. And I was like, "Move, you bastards!" You can hear me in the background, just getting angry by the complete lack of hype around this because they're just there for sudden death. And as much as I love him, that's a bummer to see.
Well, that's kind of like, another thing that where that music thrives. It's a collective kind of like of similar energies in a room, and if you don't have that kind of tick in your brain where you go apeshit for the music, it just doesn't hit. And that's for me. That's why I select, and I'm very observant of where to talk about the music and who to show it to and how to show it to them. Really, because nowadays there's just so much of it, and there's always a lot of shows to go to. So it's more now people make a decision whether or not, okay, an artist can be playing, but is the venue good? Do they like the venue? Is it a good venue to be at? Oh, okay. Like, if is that cool? All right. How's the sound? How's the crowd? All these different things can, you know, make or break whether or not someone will go to a show or not. And I think there isn't we're losing the touch of having these venues consistently push out the shows for the underground. And that's why there's few hubs throughout the U.S., but I hope to see more in the coming months, coming years. This is where this moment in time is very important for the music, because that's where the underground really starts to become a thing.
Well, and I think one of the things that we really wanted to talk about, especially for those who come to our little talk at Lost Lands, is the pros and cons of this, mainstream mountain that we are just
Mm,
flying up right now.
yeah.
Because on one hand, yeah, it is really cool to see. I think we're kind of verging on another, I think 2018, 2017 was kind of a rhythm renaissance. Like we were seeing just peak at that moment. And then, kind of, shifted. There was a lot more dubstep at that time. But now, I mean, with all this attention. A bunch of artists are getting their visas again. We're starting to see lineups like we haven't seen in a long time. With social media, we're just brimming with new artists popping up every single day that are putting out incredible stuff. But then at the same time, we're losing that kind of special. We're losing our little niche.
Mm,
It's
yeah, that's where there's for me a lot of the pros. They're really pro. It makes things, projects, ideas easier to accomplish and achieve. And just because a lot of the plans and actions that I'm currently undergoing have been in the works for many years, but I knew at the time the time to really execute the plan wasn't then. So I just kept, training, studying, taking notes, asking questions. And then now, especially with this past year, I would want to say it's changed completely, in the sense where there's always an opportunity and possibility for these things to happen. and every day the music continues to grow. There's more people who start following it, and then it's kind of like a new audience of people who are looking for a reason why they should be investing their time into this music, and also trying to educate themselves on the culture of the music, because that's what really keeps people around, is the
Yeah.
culture, right? Or the community, which, you know, a lot of places have success. A lot of like there's always failures and successes, no matter what local scene it's gonna be. But it's all about the continuous work of people who want to push the sound and create something cool, creating that little bubble in space where it's safe and secure, and you know you can just keep pumping out the promotion for these shows. But it also kind of brings in a new crowd of people who may not have the same respect for the sound as everyone else. And also, a lot of people go into it without really doing their research. And with that being said, it just kind of like oversaturates things.
Right. And I mean, that's, we've talked about this in the past for any of the house heads out there. Elro, um, very cool in some aspects because people aren't going necessarily for a certain artist; they're going for an experience. But at the same time, you get the other side of that coin, and you get
Mm-hmm.
people who are just going because it's Elro.
Yeah, no. The first Elro, and it's a very like carnival like, you know, the production is crazy, very good house music. I started going to it in 2016 out here in New York, and those first Elros that I would attend were just impeccable, really, just
Right.
spot on. But over time, as the venues grew, so did the crowd, and with the crowd came more people who just I just rude, rude
Mm.
individuals, especially out here in New York. Goodness. But you know, it ended up becoming a choice for me to kind of look for things that were more intimate, that
Yeah.
I could escape that big crowd. And as I did more of my research, I was like, it's not in the house world, because house is very mainstream. So it's where I went to the techno world, but I was still stuck in like the upper crust of it all, where a lot of big venues, very like commercialized venues hosting these shows, and once again the crowd, the vibe just didn't hit. And eventually I
Yeah.
found, you know, Basement in Brooklyn, that techno place that love it, and I only go there. Like there could be shows elsewhere, but this is my home, and they really curate the sound. They really respect the music, and they leave this kind of allure to it all, where you have to be there. If you're not there,
Yeah.
then you're shit out of luck, because there's no videos, there's no nothing from the night. So
Sure.
it only happened for the people in that venue, for the DJ
Right.
playing. That night is encapsulated with those individuals, which
Well, and I think my
cool.
first experience of that sort of realization, like I used to kind of have a foot in each scene. I was big into dubstep, loved Excision and all that, big into Riddim, was all over that underground scene. And when I used to see Excision at smaller venues, it'd be like, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 cap. And then 2019 was the big change. He played Navy Pier in Chicago for the first time rather than the Aragon. Aragon would always sell out. They might do a second night, but Navy Pier, they didn't sell that out because it's such a massive venue. I think it was 15,000 cap. And you, with a smaller venue, you get the people who get those tickets immediately because they want to be there. They love the artist. They're 100% going to that. The bigger you get, the more there is room for the, oh, this looks fun. Yeah, let's
Mm,
go do that. Who have no respect for you, no respect for the scene. And that's what really takes away from it. And that was a terrible show on almost every account. The sets were okay, but it was the first dubstep show. I had brought my girlfriend who wasn't really heavily into it, and I wanted to show her, this is what I love. This is my scene. These are my people, and we showed up early. I wanted to be on the rail for a little bit, and we literally got forced off by this big group of sorority girls that were
mm,
just unbelievably. I'd never seen anything like it. I literally, after that moment, I just sat on the side and was just like sad. I was so middle of the show. I'm just like, wow, this this sucks.
Well, yeah, this. Someone mentioned in the chats. I forgot to say this about the basement in Brooklyn. They like control the audience that comes in. So at the door, they can reject you, and they can tell you next week, and they'll give you a refund on your ticket. Now, I didn't know that they were implementing this. I know in Europe they do it all the time, and
Right.
I've been through it, but it wasn't until maybe a couple months ago I was rejected at the door. I was like, oh shit, they do this, okay. And then I started finding out they've been doing it. I've just been getting in every time, but that one moment, you know, it didn't deter me. It made me more motivated to come back the next time. And now that I go, I'm nervous because I'm like, what if tonight's not the night? What if like for some reason they're like, no, and they question you. They ask you like, oh, why? Who are you here to see? And
Mhm.
a lot of people get rejected that way because they're like, oh, I don't know, I'm just here
Just popping out.
next week. See you later. And
But
a lot of
go ahead.
people who, I can see a lot of people being like, oh, that's elitist and whatnot. Well, for them, they're really controlling the environment because they're making sure that the people that enter the club are there for the music. Now, when they ask me who's playing, I'll give them a whole biography of the DJ playing and what they do and where they're from, and where they are tomorrow and what they did last week. I'll give them the whole rundown because I'm really into the music. But that way controls the crowd, controls the environment, and then you're in a space where they try to make it safe for everyone just to be themselves, do whatever, and have fun, be one with the music. Which I'm like, why not do that for the rhythm world?
Yeah.
And I feel like just asking simple questions about like who is playing tonight is the least that someone could know about what's happening that night. Even if it's someone that has never been there before, but as long as they're like, yeah, like I've been listening to them for a little bit, I'm interested. Okay, no problem.
Right.
You know,
Well, I mean,
mm,
I've always wondered about that because I was doing a lot of research into Bergheim a couple of years back, and I thought about that. Which which questions you ask and what answers are you looking for? Because on one hand, there's the people like you, for example, who it doesn't really matter who's playing. You're going because you love this scene, you love this. So answering like I'm just here because I love this. Oh, but that's not the right answer. You have to know who's playing.
it
Yeah,
it all varies. Like, so
right.
there's this, like you mentioned, there's this club in Germany called the Berghain, right? And it is what is known as like the hardest techno club to get into in the world. The success rate is like 20%. So most people get rejected throughout the night, and they ask you a myriad of questions: who's playing, why are you here, how many people are you with, have you been here before, kind of the whole nine yards, to see how you react and all that. I was able to get in last year when I went. uh, One of those moments, it was great. I was there by myself too, dressed normally as I normally would be, and I think they barely asked me any questions. Also, it was in German, so I if they were to ask me like in-depth questions, I would have. I don't think I said a single word. I just nodded my head, and I think at one point they asked like how many, but I kind of understood what that was. So I was like, I think this is what he's asking, and then boom, and then I'll just say one, and then he let me in. It was a beautiful night, um, and yeah, that was kind of like a moment in time that I'll always love, and it was an accomplishment. And I knew that if I didn't get in, I would just get back online. So, but that way, they control the ambiance and they control the environment, so to speak. Like, they are very strict with it too. So that's another thing. But at the end of the day, it is their venue, and they are curating something very special. So I don't see a problem with it at all.
Right.
And I know other people would. I can, yeah. Someone mentioned in the chats you'd call the bouncer a gatekeeper. Yeah, No, that's I remember talking to Modestep. I was in Budapest this past summer, and I was talking to him about it, and he said something similar to that, and I remember responding to him being like, "Well, this is how they protect their culture,
Yeah, it's not every show. It's our show.
their
It's
show."
this show.
Yeah,
Like,
there's so many shows out there that you could go to that
yeah,
do not have a problem with letting whoever in.
yeah,
They are choosing to do that. That's their choice, and you don't
yeah,
have to go.
yeah.
So with that, it that's always interested me because I remember when I first played Budapest, I was sharing some ideas with a lot of the locals. I love Budapest. If anyone out there can make it to Budapest, you go
Shout out Frat
immediately.
Budapest.
Frat, my man out there, Levente, doing some great things. Number one hub in the world for the Riddim underground music. If you want to feel the vibe of 2015, 2016, when things were at its peak, in my opinion at least, go to Budapest. But over there, I was kind of shooting some ideas to people and kind of like shot the idea. I'm like, what if there's these huge artists playing and 200 capacity, limited tickets. You could only buy at the door, and then they would ask you questions at before you get in. And once the capacity is met, that's it for the night. See you later, and you just have to show up early to be in line. That's it. And then I people were very intrigued by the idea, and I asked them, if you got rejected, would you get back in line if you could? They're like 100%, no doubt in my mind. And I kept asking people throughout the night. I kept the same thing, same story, same idea, and everyone was like, "I'd get back online. I'd get back online." And
Yeah,
a lot of their responses were like, because I care about the music. This is something sick, and also like that everyone there is there for the same reason: the music,
sure.
the ambiance, the environment, and that's where the intimacy of it all really makes Riddim shine.
Yeah,
Some of the best shows
and
I've ever played have been small, intimate vibes.
yeah, no, I would love to get something like that, and because you, especially in a big city, you would 100% be able to, do like a string of shows like that. The most difficult part would be maybe not so much the rhythm scene because a lot of artists are so excited to do something like that. But what you were talking about is like getting a big artist. Like you would have to get people who are more experience oriented, more scene oriented than monetarily oriented, which
Mm.
nowadays we don't see that a lot. I mean, the glory days was a bunch of uh people who didn't leave the house. Like, you look at the old pictures of all the big artists, Midnight Tea and all them. It was just, all the love to them, but it wasn't Sullivan King and Kaiwachi and these fucking just absolute muscle man chads that are, welcome everywhere and never glanced at twice.
Mm.
And it's just very, very different to see the state of EDM producers. It's really interesting to look at that.
Yeah. I think with the underground, there's always a sense of community, and there's always a certain point in time where an artist leaves the underground and kind of gets into the mainstream stuff, whether or not rhythm could be considered mainstream, and there's different styles of the sound that would be considered that, but in essence, where a lot of this lies, a lot of these bigger artists play out these underground tunes, and it's only a positive for the artist because more people find out about them, and then now they're playing more shows and getting closer to whatever their goal is. And it also opens up the eyes of other bigger producers or DJs who are like, oh, this is cool, and want to help out the underground. So
Right.
as there's a pro and a con, right? Sometimes with the mainstream stuff, you invite or you bring people who may change the vibe of the show, right? And but at the same time, it also pushes the scene further because the bigger the show, more people, the more people. It's a web, you know.
Yep.
If you have like like 2,000 people at a show, those 2,000 people are going to talk about it to their friends, and out of those 2,000 people, you can guarantee probably like at least 100 are going to come to their first show for their first time next time something's around. So it always multiplies over time. There's no stopping that. It's just going to get bigger and bigger, and more songs, more underground artists are going to be put on to the mainstream limelight, which for me, you know, I know it's going to happen. But what we can do is start the conversation of what the underground is, what makes the culture of Riddim, in the sense of like at least the underground, because we can't deny that a lot of this is mainstream. So we're talking specifically about the underground sound, and that's a very distinct one kind of thing. And I don't want to get too much into detail about like the sound and all this stuff, because I'm here just to kind of like talk about, you know, what it means to me, the cultural aspect, and how, you know, it's affected you and all this stuff, and has brought you, because you are someone who goes to many different types of shows, right? You don't just go to dubstep and Riddim shows and all this stuff. You go to all types, so you see a perspective in different genres. But where the music is going is hard to say for sure. But
Well,
yeah,
I mean, regardless of where the music may be going, if you have like-minded people, what would be cool to do would be continuing to curate that specific scene and doing this, you know, string of shows with, you know, people at the door asking questions, stuff like that. Like, if you want to go see this artist, you're more than welcome to go do that somewhere else, at a festival, at another concert, at a bigger event. But what, you know, we are going to do is different from that, and that's what I think is the coolest part about it. Is, yeah, you can go see sudden death anywhere, but being able to see sudden death with, like, you know, 200, 300 people would be really, really fun.
yeah, and that's kind of like where there's a group out in Amsterdam and like another techno group collective. And I mention that a lot because there's a lot of similarities between the underground techno scene and the underground Riddim scene. But what they do, it's called Vault Sessions, and every now and then they have secret lineups that have happened in our world, right? But they do it more frequently, and it always sells out. People go out of their way to these shows, and they have no idea who's playing, but they put their trust in the promoter to kind of provide an amazing time, and always hits. It's always a banger. So with that, it's kind of like a novel idea where does your audience trust you enough to curate a vibe that'll help the sound resonate the most? And that's something that I think is very possible in the near future. I think also like being very low key about it too, I think is something that I want to focus on, where if you know, you know.
Oh yeah, there's a series of shows in Chicago called Freak Easy, where nobody knows who throws it, nobody knows where it's going to be, nobody knows who's going to be playing there, but, you know, select people will know about it, select people will tell their select people, and it just kind of spreads in private. There's, you know, no public advertising for it whatsoever.
Yeah.
And I got to go to one, and I think it was 2018, and it was a phenomenal night. Didn't know who was playing, didn't know what was going on, didn't know anybody there, but had a phenomenal time. Like, just a really, really cool and kind of out of the blue experience that I definitely wouldn't have expected.
Yeah. And that way, like, right now, what makes the show successful is promotion, social media, constant marketing, whether or not the promoter has the trust of the audience as well, because that's another hard thing to curate and gain.
Opinion.
Yeah, exactly. So all these things are necessary to get a show going, and a lot of other things. But imagine a world where you don't need all that, and you can focus more on curating the proper venue, the proper environment, proper sound, and already know that there's going to be the set amount of number of people that you need to make the night possible. Because once word gets out, people are like, boom, okay. And that is something that we do not have. Not to my knowledge. And if I don't know about it, cool. That means it's happening and it hasn't gotten to me yet. But where you kind of like live in the shadow of things, to be able to do these things, like someone mentioned, like what's the door thing, like you ask someone when they enter the venue who's playing. It could just be one question: who's playing? Oh, okay. Well, if you don't know, then I'm not sure if this is a night for you. Like, how do you buy a ticket for a show and not know who's playing? At least one artist. Doesn't have to be the headliner. It could be the opener. It could be the local DJ. If you don't know one of the five, then it's just like, okay. But it could be your first time, and that's another thing too. So there's always like room for kind of like flexibility. But at the end of the day, it's kind of like curating that audience. And if you don't really promote it, and you just do it low key, and no real footage or anything comes out of it the next day or weekend or whatever, and you just keep doing that vibe and let people kind of spread the word, you create something cool that people start to kind of chase after.
Right. FOMO is a powerful drug.
Was I think Jay Cody, what would be an example of a vibe check? Yeah, I think I just mentioned that. But just like, making sure that the person is there for the right reasons, I guess is
curating a crowd as well as an experience.
Yeah. Just making sure, because I get on a lot of conversations with people, a lot of calls, and I always mention how I treat what I do like school. So I try to be educated. I try to, do my research and at least have some knowledge of what's happening so that I can be attentive and I know, like, what I'm here for and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of like that. Like, if you're preparing for a test or an exam or whatever, you just need to study. And you need to know what you're getting yourself into. So...
Well, Paul actually brought up a point. He said specifically looking for people there for the music and not just to get fucked up.
Yeah.
Say you're doing a line of shows that is, kind of this little underground, low capacity, intimate experience. What are your thoughts on the bar? Like, do you want there to be a bar? Do you,
yeah, so
for the people that are getting fucked up?
Okay, here we go. There's techno artist, a legend. His name is DVS1, and he's from Minneapolis, right? Minnesota. So he's like a legend in the world. He's always playing shows. He also has all these different companies that he's working on for the music. And what he has is a venue out there in Minneapolis that he owns. And like 2-3 times out of the year, he goes to that venue, and it's announced, probably a couple of weeks beforehand. You need to be on an email list to really know what the location is, or you find out from word of mouth. And so it's a very limited capacity. I think it's probably like 400 or 500 people, and probably one of the best venues I've ever been to in my entire life. And everything is just very low key. A lot of it's not legal. He pays the cops off to make sure they're down the block, to make sure nothing's happening and all this stuff. So it's very DIY. And also, like, you can't use your camera or anything like that. You get kicked out if you do. And that, in essence, they also have a bar where they serve some drinks. They also have like smoothies and healthy kind of drinks as well. So a large like selection of things. And at one point I was with one of my good friends, Umair. We went there together, and we go to the bar. It was only cash. He was looking for a drink, and he was like, "Ah, man, I guess I'll go take out some money." And she's like, "Well, we have complimentary beer." And I was like, complimentary? But yeah, she's like, "Yeah, we have complimentary beer, wine, and water." I couldn't believe it. I was like, "What?" And
I love that.
in the crowd, an amazing crowd, and there's people who had like 3-4 beers in their hand. Beer time! I remember hearing one guy, and you know, everyone, they're all drinking this free beer, free wine. You know, people are just, you know, and never an issue throughout the whole night. And
Yeah.
this is about like 400 people in one space. So yeah, I think it's fine to have a
Yeah, and
bar. You know.
incentivizing that more sober aspect. Because I mean, for me personally, I don't like going to shows and festivals and being off really anything. You know, for those of you who know me, know that 98% of the time I'm dead sober. And, you know, sure, you get a little grief. Oh, sober Sally, whatever. You know, I have almost any single friend that I have, I could point to a single instance where they had an issue and they got too messed up. Nobody has one of those stories about me. I'm always there for the show. I'm always having a good time, and I'm always there for the music. There's no better drug or high than hype at a rhythm show. I mean, honestly, that moment of is is insane. And the only time that I do feel the need to do it, there's a venue in Chicago called Soundbar, which actually has the potential, if we did have a rhythm gatekeeper at the door, to be a phenomenal venue. Very cool layout, but it's horrible. And unfortunately, they book a lot of great artists that I really want to go see. And that is the only time that I feel the need to get drunk before I even go in. Because I'm not going to have a good time. I'm going to be irritated by the crowd the entire time. I'm going to be, you know, squished in there, and it's just it's not it. And I've never felt that need of Bay Station or any of the other, you know, great intimate shows that I've been to. And so, you know, for the
Yeah.
people out there who do go to shows sober, it's probably because you're having a better time and you're there for the right reasons.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I remember early day Graham Green. I used to drink. I used to do all the things, and I enjoyed it. You know, I had my time, my run. I think it's up to anyone's choice of what they're going to be doing throughout the night. The one thing that I've, you know, always try to keep in mind is that whatever you do, just make sure it doesn't affect other people. You know, like your behavior is in check. Like you
Hmm.
could go fucking buck wild, go right ahead, but as long as you are in control and self-aware of your movements and you're respectful to others, yeah, go ahead, do your thing. But that's where a lot of markets nowadays, you go, I go to them, and there's a lot of people who, you know, go to these shows to get really fucked up, and it it really, like, especially nowadays, since it's so popular, it's become a haven for people to do that. And
Hmm.
in Philadelphia, when I was getting my start out there in like 2018, I played many warehouse shows. And at these warehouse shows, they would have the nitrous tanks, you know, with the balloons and
Hmm.
everything. And, you know, back in the day, I used to love my balloons. They used to call me Graham Glow. I think there's many venues, like many shows that I would get paid in balloons. I didn't give a fuck. Let's go. Party time. It's my birthday. And over time, you know, like, I just didn't like the vibe anymore. It just didn't hit the same way, and just kind of like
Yeah.
ruined the night for me. So I just stopped doing it as a choice. But then I started realizing that a lot of these shows in 2018, early 2019, in the Philly warehouse scene, a lot of people would just go for that, you know, and
Right.
then it became like a connection to the underground rhythm music where like you go to like see a sick underground artist, but then you probably have that on the side.
Hmm.
And where it was kind of like a catch 22 because like these shows were sick in 2019 Philadelphia. If you were part of that age, especially like the first 6 months, woo, the underground was popping, you know, and it was a good place to be. But at the same time, a lot of these shows would get funded by the tanks,
Right.
and I remember working with a lot of them. Other than just playing shows, I would help with the artist relations, you know, taking care of the artists and doing all this different stuff. And I would mention that if they don't start kind of taking stuff seriously, in the sense where they like start funding this properly and not needing to rely on the money made from that,
Yep.
then it's not going to have longevity. And it also kind of like gives this tone to your underground community that like the drug is needed for the music where it isn't. You know, you can
Yeah.
music is the drug itself. So whatever you add on top of that, you know, whatever it is, when it becomes the main center point of it all, that's where things kind of get a little weird.
Yeah, I start up every morning by shooting up 50 mil straight rhythm, just
Mm,
right in there.
you know,
We had a similar series of shows like that. There was this taco joint by day, rhythm venue by night that was funded by balloons, and there was some awesome shows there because the guy who threw them had a great taste for the underground. The only time I've ever been able to see Getarix, I don't know if it
is it
was.
Bugue?
Yeah, 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 yeah. It
I
was
played that
Duffy
show.
playing Yeah, 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 and that's what made me think of it. And we did a lot of shows there.
Yeah, and
But it was
it was
it was a sketch tank.
it was I got a lot of footage that night, but I never ever posted it because there was people with balloons, and it just adds that extra kind of like layer to the music that shouldn't be there, right?
Right.
Um,
And
but
it didn't last.
it didn't last, no. And a lot of these places that there's still those places that do it throughout the U.S. But it's the longevity isn't there. I think the last warehouse show that I played was in like maybe the summer of 2021,
Mm.
and yeah, I was like, yeah, this is it. I'm good off this because you could do this in the warehouse without that, and it would be
Oh yeah.
fucking sick. It's not needed. But yeah, that's how it goes sometimes with the underground. A lot of I asked this in Europe a lot. I'm like, do you guys have that? And they're like, no, it's not really a thing.
Yeah.
It's really out here in the States, but very
Well, and
interesting how it works out.
no hate towards people who need to do something like that to start off, but that should be a stepping stone. That should not be the business model.
Mm,
Like,
yeah,
do what you got to do. If you have a desire to do this, go after it. Do what you got to do. Do it right, and then go legit and keep doing what you're doing and keep supporting that,
mm,
but through different means.
yeah, but what time is it? Ooh, I got to start wrapping up soon. But
Well, we
um,
could do a little like, do you want to do like Q&A or something like that? Just kind of
yeah, like
get in the mode of our presentation.
let's yeah, we'll go to the chat right now for a little bit, and if anyone has any questions, let me see. Well, there's already a question in there. Graham, what do you think about the Riddim bus? I haven't made it out yet. I think is a great idea. When I was contacted by it, I saw it when it first started, right? So I was like, yes, this is it. Really, where to bring back the scene out here in New York, we got to do stuff like this. I played an 8-hour set at a pizzeria this summer, right? Straight rinse the whole time, and that was a vibe. And that day, people came together, and the people who are still about the music are still here, and I was kind of waiting for something else to kind of pop up, and the Riddim bus being one of them. They hit me up. They're like, "You want to be part of this?" I'm like, "Hell yes, please, let's do it." And now we're doing it. So, like I mentioned before, Riddim, if it's not in an intimate vibe setting, DIY wherever you could do it. Fuck it up, right? That's another place where it thrives, and it
Oh
also
yeah.
gives people the opportunity to converse, to get to know each other outside of a venue. And I think that was really cool about the pizzeria set that I had, because you could be listening to the music, but you could also talk to the person next to you. Be like, "Oh, where are you from? Oh shit, oh cool thing," like all this stuff, and you start finding other people who are into the music, and that is how a community and a culture start to really come together. So
Yeah. Well, and Chicago kind of does that too with the coast, like anywhere at Montrose Beach or any one of the parks on the lakefront. Recently, we just had Yuki hanging out with the Dub Hub boys and everything, and we were like, we should set up some sort of thing. We ended up going out there with decks and a folding table, and didn't say anything about it until it started, and we went from like 7 p.m. till midnight on like a Thursday night or something, and probably like 200, 300 people came out, and it was a really cool little thing, just a bunch of people hanging out on the lakefront, and very special experience. And it was a Yuki house set too. Like, it wasn't even people going for Yuki to play Yuki songs. It was just the boys are here, we're having a good time, and
mm-hmm.
everyone had a blast.
Yeah, um, I think I played another boat in like 2018. It was out in like Neptune, New Jersey. Like Atlantic City area, and that was like a lot smaller, kind of like one of those boats that goes around, similar to the MKE out there in Milwaukee. But that was also a vibe. You know, that was really cool to be there in a different setting and all that. So yeah, that's another way of kind of, and it's also something outside of the box. You know, it's when you hear about shows, they're always at venues and all this stuff. But then when you see the content from the Riddim bus, you're like, wait, there's a Riddim bus? Like,
Yeah, I didn't know
what do
this
you
was a
mean?
series. I
Yeah,
thought this was like the first time it was happening. That's really, really cool.
yeah. Let's see. Question from Coddles. Thoughts on the new wave versus old wave? Okay.
Ooh.
All right. You want to go first?
Sure. I probably have different opinions on this from Graham because, you know, I was a lot later to the scene. My first show was 2016, and you know, I wasn't able to see a lot of you know, the really cool early stuff. And I do miss the old days in a lot of ways. I was just editing Flux Pavilion and Dr. P at EDC in 2018, and just hearing those songs getting played. Oh God, I miss that. And there's not a lot of that, but I do love just the mass amount of rhythm coming out right now, and the ability for all these creators to share it and get the name out there. And you know, hell, shout out Graham's Discord server. You know,
Mm,
people are able to post their stuff in there. There's a self promo area,
yeah.
so I would have to say old wave sound preference, but there is a lot to come, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah. Um, and in my opinion, and I'll always be the guy, but old school vibe, take me back, and really, the new wave of music is the sound design is getting crazy, right? There's a lot of good producers out there. I work with a multitude of artists, not in the projected underground rhythm scene, right? Where they have this new, what I call contemporary rhythm, new rhythm, whatever genre you want to like denote it as, but it isn't the OG sound, right? It's faster paced, it's more aggressive. I think it's sick. I love to see people coming into the scene, doing their thing and killing it. All the different brands coming out nowadays. The accessibility to the artists as well is so much. Just the new wave, the connection that you can make with people, the community you could build. The new wave really brings that to light. But I will always enjoy kind of like the old wave culture of things, how traditions were kept up, and also just the ambiance of everything. But that's why I work really hard out here to kind of emulate those memories and bring them to people who are now part of the scene. Because I know like a lot of people weren't part of it in 2012, you know. I know a lot of people got into it 2018, 2019 during the pandemic. So there's a whole plethora of stuff and knowledge that has happened that a lot of people don't know about. So I guess that's where these conversations come into play so that people can really get a broader perspective of the things that have happened before their time. History. If you don't have a history of things, then you don't have a culture. So that's where
True.
I'm at. But yeah, old wave.
Yeah,
Let's see. Do-do-do-do-do.
I agree with that for the most part. I do love some of the like faster, just
Where
but
yeah, things are loud nowadays for sure. The loudness war.
I
Um,
see Dewobulator thoughts on 360 shows, and we just had to talk about this.
oh yeah, 360. So timeline of Riddim 360 shows. July 2021, Graham Green at Base Station. First known 360 event that happened. I remember the promoters hitting me up. They're like, would you want to do this? And this was because there was a show in the dubstep world with an artist called Chi recently that happened. That was 360. So that's what inspired the idea for them. And I was like, let's do it. I'm down. Boom. We did it. And it didn't pop off until October of 2022 with Bomber's infrasound set. Now, I will tell you, I can argue this all day long. If you want to tell me something otherwise, I need to see the evidence. But this is where the 360 events popped off. It was Man's Like Bomber at Infrasound. After that, it was just uphill. All these 360 events coming out. And where I stand with them, I like them. I think they're cool. I think it gives everyone the opportunity to be in the same space, right? And also surrounding the DJ. Yeah. I also do prefer kind of the traditional setup of like a stage and, you know, the crowd. But with the 360, everyone's at the same level, which for me matters a lot. Because a lot of things with these newer shows, these festivals, especially like Lost Lands, you know how big that stage is? Like, if you're at the rail, your head is up the whole time, you know, trying to see whatever they have. It's just,
Yeah,
you know,
I've never been on that rail,
it,
but I've been on the center rail, like
mm,
kind of maybe halfway up. I like to stay in front of the sound booth just for visual pleasure. But like, oh my God,
it's,
seeing the evolution of that stage,
it's
it
big.
was really cool seeing, like, I don't know if you were at Reunion right after COVID. It was kind of the first Lost Lands event back,
Mm,
and they did the year one stage, and that was the most fun I'd had at Lost Lands since year one. It really recaptured those old vibes. There was not
right.
a lot of people there,
Mm-hmm.
only one stage. You were there for that, and that was it.
Right.
Not a lot of movement. Phenomenal. But I did just kind of take away from the 360 thing. Um, I would argue I had a point to make, but I think Boiler Room did a lot for that. I
Mm-hmm.
think that yeah, obviously the first big rhythm thing that happened was that, but for that base station set, I believe COVID had a big part in that too because we had a weird COVID setup at base station where there was like sections, and I'm not sure if that was still there for that set. I can't really remember, but I feel like that had a part in it as well.
Maybe.
COVID really
Yeah.
changed it.
Uh-huh. Um, but yeah, Boiler Room definitely had a big influence on it. They were the ones that pioneered it, and they've been doing it.
Right.
But the popularity of it in the scene has really escalated. And the one thing that I don't like about 360s is that it has to be properly curated. Sound on all ends. It has to have a good area for the DJ to be in, right? Nice space, and also like um, where the people are also needs to be a good kind of like space for them.
Right.
A lot of people have been jumping on the 360 bandwagon for
Oh
sure,
yeah.
100%.
And Rain even said that Boiler Room Fred again just exploded. I
Mm,
mean, yeah.
yes, yes. Okay, let me see. We'll take like a couple more questions, and then I'm off to the races. Let's see. Jay Allen, we'll pick this one. What do you guys think of the current wave of mainstream dubstep over the last few years, being heavily inspired by Riddim, oversaturated?
Oh, it's. I mean, it's definitely not true, but like, Subtronics just irks me. Like, it all started at an after party, at my old apartment. I had a huge balcony, 45th floor, beautiful view. Go enjoy it. If you want to smoke, do it outside. That's all I ask. And a couple hours later, hey, where's Jesse? And oh, I think he's in the master bedroom. Go in the master bedroom, no one's there. I see the light on in the bathroom, and he's in there with like five other people, full dab rig, two blunts in rotation, just hotboxing the ever living shit out of that bathroom. And I walk in, I'm like, dude, I had one rule. He's like, no, these are just my friends. It's cool. I'm like, I don't know who these people are. Like, every time you turned on the bathroom fan for the next 3 months, it smelled like weed. And his sets like kind of irk me the same way. All in the build up, you hear like these underground things, and the real rhythm fans get kind of and then he just ruins it. It's like, why do that in the first place? Who are you doing that for? Your mainstream audience doesn't appreciate it. They're just there for the drop anyways. You're gonna drop a quad of nonsense, and it just kind of
Well,
irks me.
I think you're irked because of your personal situation with him. Um, but
Why do it? Because the majority of the fan base doesn't
I'm gonna be
appreciate
real.
hearing
Like,
shark thrown into the buildup.
if I were there at that house, I would be in that bathroom. So you'd probably hate me too. But what with Subtronics, right? He, in my opinion, was a very important part of the scene. In the essence, really like putting on a lot of artists. Whether or not his sets are what they used to be, that's up to people's opinion. But I guess the cultural impact that he's had is undeniable.
Or would you
Right.
say it's a good thing? Is the argument to be made?
Well, a lot of these artists that are underground or need that recognition have gotten it, and whenever these tunes are dropped, right? So his EDC set, there was a lot of underground stuff that was dropped there.
Mm-hmm.
That just gives more limelight to the artist, right?
Sure.
When in 2019, I remember mixing at his house and I showed him Shark and Glocks and all these people, and he started playing them in his sets, and that gave them that extra kind of like push for them to kind of be doing their thing. So where I think the state of the dubstep mainstream market is at, I would have to say it is heavily inspired with what's happening in the underground, because there is a lot of hype behind it, and there are a lot of videos that get a lot of views because of it. So
Right.
in essence, it is very much so inspired. There's, once again, there's pros and cons to it all, because more of an audience finds out about the music through these mainstream artists. So it's about the people who dig deep to the to the core of where it's all at, where we like to be in. That's up to the person who's looking for it, and
Right.
I guess that's where these conversations come into play, and the content that'll come out in the future, where people get to learn more about it, and it takes them less time to find out about it. In
Sure.
essence, um,
Well,
so that's.
and
But the state of it, I don't listen to mainstream dubstep, so
yeah.
I couldn't really tell you.
Well,
Um,
I think kind of a cool thing that's come out of it is, you know, uh, I've always had a sort of in the back of my head, Marshmello. I've always had a little respect for him because the first half of his set was always his songs, and in the second half, I remember I got a free ticket to a show in 2018. Bunk Case, Crimer, really old. By the way, can we bring back Crimer? Regardless,
Simon,
but
that's a dude.
old circus tunes. Like it was just I was blown away, and I had a great time at that. And the sudden death back to back Marshmallow set um, at EDC Vegas this year, in my opinion, was phenomenal. They were playing things that Circuit Grounds has never heard, and I had a riot, especially after the first 15 minutes when the people who went for Marshmallow just left en masse, and it was beautiful. And that was one of my all-time favorite sets of that weekend. It was so much fun.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's where I will always be saying that without the mainstream, a lot of these ideas and projects that I have probably won't be able to happen. I played Lost Lands, that big main stage in 2019, and that brought me to a new level. And every time, like last year, with the Church of Infect, which would probably be the last thing that I touch on because I gotta go. But with that video, it reminded people of what's possible with the music. Now, whether you want to call it Riddim or Trench, I'm not here to debate that. You have your own preference on it. But what it did for the underground scene was it put it on a different limelight, in the sense of like, this exists and people want it.
Yeah.
So that kind of changed the trajectory for not only Infect but myself and many others. And that is kind of one of those moments that I chased after and I got to. And I would have to say that is what Riddim is. If you want to see a video about Riddim, you go to that one. But then you'll tell me, oh, but it was at a Lost Lands set. I'm like, yeah. But then there's all these people on stage, all these friends, homies, artists, whatever, everyone coming together at that moment and going ape shit crazier than, just as crazy as the people in the crowd. And normally at those sets, you don't see that. That is not a thing. And that is something for me, coming from the early days of the Montreal Riddim scene, the idea of having your people on stage, that also is Riddim. You know, that is part of our culture. It's something that needs to be more of, I guess. But anyways, I think that's it for tonight. Do you want to add any finishing points, Mr. Nick?
Not necessarily points, but I'll do my own outro. Thank you so much for having me. I actually had a really good time tonight. I hope all of you did as well. And for all the homies who came out tonight, I see you in the chat. You've been trying to make me laugh the entire time. I appreciate that. Shout out Busted Dub. Shout out Gators. You know, if you want to, right now I'm not exactly posting much Riddim, but, you know, show LucheriniHD some love on YouTube, or for more current stuff, more Riddim. My Instagram is better than my YouTube. But hopefully we get to do this in the future. We've been in a lot of talks, just kind of seeing what might happen. And Sunday, noon, Lost Lands, come join us, infiltrating the mainstream from within.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Thank you, Nick, for joining. Appreciate this conversation. And we're going to have many more of these, you know, with everyone possible, whether it's an audience member, someone who supports the music a lot, someone who does content, someone who makes the content. We're really diving deep and going to have these conversations more often about a myriad of things, because there's a lot of things to touch on, a lot of things to talk about, and we need to provide a source of this information so that these ideas that we mentioned today can be possible one day. And through education and knowledge and spreading the history of what things are and what they used to be like is my next mission here. And thanks, Nick, once again for giving me the opportunity on Sunday, 12 o'clock. And
started off as a joke, and look at where it's heading.
Yeah. And then I'll be doing like a meet and greet afterwards. If you guys want to chill with me for a little bit, and then we'll head off to Infect and watch that happen at 3:45. So we're out here. If you're gonna be at
the end of the day, it's all love. We may not agree, but
yeah, that's the whole point.
We just want to support the music we love.
There's no right answer here, right? It's just all conversation, and that's what it's about. Because one thing that a lot of people end up doing online is kind of making this into an argument or a debate, where in essence that just goes nowhere. But having discussions about it and different perspectives really helps bring the knowledge up for all of us. So anyways, that was us. Thank you guys once again. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And we'll see you next time.